the top of the hour. So hello to everyone joining us for our webinar on Ask the Expert, How to Measure Employee Engagement. I'm delighted to be joined today by our guest speakers. We've got Dougie Cameron calling in from Access. Dougie, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yep. So I'm a call center and customer engagement, employee engagement consultant.
Okay.
I'm interested in many things. Former operations director at Sky and finance director before that.
Brilliant. And we're also joined by Hitan Patel from the RSVP Contact Centre in London. And Hitan, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Absolutely. My name's Hitan Patel. As Megan said, I'm the Client Services Director. I've been in the industry for about 11 years, worked solely at RSVP. Started life on the phones as a call centre agent and slowly worked my way up.
Okay, brilliant. And we're also joined by Claire Luckman from the Syniac Contact Centre in Bristol. Claire, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience as well?
Hello, good afternoon. My name's Claire Luckman. I am a team leader in a smaller contact centre in Bristol with a team of 6 agents under me.
Okay. We're also joined by Jonty Pearce, editor of Call Centre Helper. Jonty, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience? I'm sure it's not necessary.
Hi everybody, I'm Jonty. I'm editor of Call Centre Helper, and I'm delighted to be on this webinar today. Employee engagement is a topic very dear to my heart. We've written a lot of articles over time on the link between happy employers and happy customers, and I think that's really good. Measurement of how you can measure that happiness, if you like, or that engagement, I think is quite a tough one. It's not like you can just go and take a report off your telephone system. So I think it's going to be quite a fascinating discussion on how to take that measurement.
Wonderful. Okay, so just following up with some housekeeping, at the end of the webinar you will be able to download the replay from www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. During the webinar we're also going to be looking out for the best tips and questions, so the winning tip or question today will win either a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates. So just keep posting them into the chat room using #question or #tip so we can spot those. And this is a live online discussion today that we're having in the chat room, so if you go to www.callcenterhelper.com/chat, you can join the discussion in there. If you've got any questions for our panel or just like to post your tips, you can do so in there. There's also a button to download the chat log in the bottom right hand corner if you want to share the chat log with your team at the end of the day. Okay, so as I said earlier, we've got our whole host of speakers to answer your questions today. So I think we're going to kick things off with a poll, Jonty.
Indeed, I'll just get the poll up on my screen here. Hopefully you can all see that now. So the question of the audience is: how often do you survey employees? Is it annually or less? Is it every 6 months? Is it every quarter? Do you do it every month? Or do you have some other mechanism where you do it weekly or more frequently? So if you'd just like to vote on that, how often do you survey employees? So it would be fascinating to see that. I'm just going to close the vote here and share the results up on the screen. So it looks like by far the largest amount, 56%, is annually or less. 18% do it every 6 months, 16% do it every quarter, and 9% do it every month. So quite a wide variation overall. Hitan, it looks like annually is the most common thing. Is that what you do within RSVP? I think Hitan might be on mute currently.
Sorry, can you hear me there?
We can indeed, yes.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I would say it's slightly less than annually, but more than 6 months. And the reason for that really is after, conducting an employee engagement survey, you really want enough time to actually be able to put some of what you found out and your learnings into action. For us, I think, trying to put something and ingraining something that may be a big change to your company to actually, engage your employees a lot more could probably take more, longer than a quarter. So for us, yeah, I'd kind of agree with that survey.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next question, Jonty?
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to go into the main discussion now with a question on what do you think are the best questions to ask? Dougie, what's been your experience of this? What do you think the key questions are that people should be asking to accurately capture employee engagement in their call centre?
So I think there's a lot. Obviously, there's a lot of questions that can be asked. I think the Net Promoter type one for me, if you're going to be doing this on a reasonably regular basis, that's the one that's going to give consistency, the most consistency. So would you recommend this as the place to work for your friends? But if you look at the Gallup, I think it's the Q12, they call it, the 12 questions they ask. They get into all the motivations and the engagements that people have, and they use an explanation in there of why they've got each question in. So there's lots of things that are in there, like do you have a friend that works here? Have you got the right tools to do your job? And things that are important to people. But if you were to have one question, it would be the kind of Net Promoter type question.
Okay. Claire, what's the most valuable question you think you ask your employees at the moment?
Currently, I'd say it's about how are they feeling in their role, what would they like to see. I'd really love to share with you, in preparing for the webinar today, I asked my team, because so often we come with these preconceived ideas about what we think as managers, as team leaders, and I asked my team, and they came up with that. How could you make your role more interesting? So the best way to do that would be this lovely open question of what would better look like, essentially. And
okay.
I really like that as an idea from them. So, we'll include it in. We're constantly learning and changing.
Yeah, and I suppose the fact that you're going through that exercise of taking on their feedback anyway is hopefully going to boost engagement levels in your call centre. So it seems like a win-win all around there. Hitton, what do you think is the best question you're currently asking everyone in your call centre?
I think for us it's how valued do you feel to be part of RSVP?
Okay.
I think for us it's definitely about how someone feels about working here, and a lot of the questions that we ask, rather than being sort of yes or no questions, it's actual having a conversation with someone, getting them more in-depth answers so we can actually action those answers. So.
Okay, and Jonty, what do you think of those responses? Do you think?
Yeah, I think they're really great. I mean, the two that I think. There's three questions, my favourites overall, which I think are sort of very similar in a way. I mean, Dougie has already said that the one, do you have a best friend at work? Or if you don't have a best friend, someone you can confide in, because people tend to be happier if they've got a best friend that they work with. So I think that's quite a powerful one. I think one I also love is, when did you last get recognition for doing a good job? Because I think that one ties down to, does your team manager or your contact center manager respect you? And I think that the other one that's tied into that little bit is, do you trust your manager? And I think that's a very, because they say that people leave managers, not companies. And I think that's quite an interesting one. Now, obviously, the problem with that is that's got to be confidential. That's not something you can then send the whole survey back to the manager, who then can kind of embark on a vendetta to get people out. But I think those are three very interesting confidential questions to ask.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Jonty. Just going over to what some of the audience members are saying in the chat room now. Sean said, I found that questions year on year can change slightly. But someone else has said, what should be a good target for employee turnover in a call centre? And your advice asking agents individually, what is your advice to reduce employee turnover in a call centre? You know, if that's coming from them directly, they know why their friend just left to work across the road. So I think they're probably the best people to ask on that. We'll just flip to the next question now, which is coming from the audience, and that's from Sean. It says, I found that the questions year on year change slightly. Is this good? For me, it's hard to see a year-to-year change directly. Claire, what's been your experience of this? Claire?
I think Claire might be muted.
I just did what Hitton did. And Hitton, you're not alone. I did it too. Let's all learn from that. Yay! What we have is our questions stay the same year on year, so we can see that direct progression through.
Yeah.
But as I was trying to explain earlier, we have a company survey which remains annually, and then we ask different ones to try and get more details, and those we might tweak.
Okay. Hitton, do you have an answer for this question as well?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Claire on that one. We have our company survey which tends to stay the same. Rarely you might see an extra question, but rarely do we slightly change it. What we do have though is we run dedicated teams here at RSVP, so we will have inter-team surveys, and they will change depending on the management team, challenges that they may have faced the previous 6 months, a year, etc., etc. So those smaller surveys between each team will change, but actually our company-wide survey will stay the same.
Okay, and do you find with the smaller surveys that it is harder to cross-reference year on year and actually measure any level of change there?
Not so much, no, because our managers tend to be the same managers.
Okay.
So for them, they'll be the ones changing the questions. It's rare that we change our management team across an account per year. Once a manager is in that role, they'll probably stay in that role until they progress through RSVP. So it's quite easy for them to measure those changes.
Okay, thank you for that.
No
Okay, we've got another question coming up now. Do you think your current method of capturing employee engagement is accurate? And how honest do you think that people are in employee engagement surveys? Jonty, what do you think about this one?
Well, I think there's a big question about how honest people are. Certainly in things like exit interviews, I think there's quite a lot of evidence that people, though they have a chance to give a true picture, don't necessarily want to burn bridges. So in exit interviews, I don't think they're necessarily as honest as they might be, particularly if they feel it would go back to their manager, maybe who has to write a reference for them later. And I think there is a danger that in a lot of companies, if stuff is being fed back to the managers and team leaders, there is an element that could be quite uncomfortable. Well, you said this, you didn't like me. That can be quite difficult if it is broken down at that level and fed back quite granularly.
Okay, Hitton, do you think this is something your employees are wary of, about being honest or too honest in employee engagement surveys about how they feel?
To be honest, no. I don't know if everyone knows our business model. We employ resting actors and actresses, so they're not scared to voice their opinions at all in the slightest. I've got to be honest with you, whether that be in a survey or not, which is good, which is great. We have open dialogues all the time. So no, I don't think our guys are afraid to actually speak their minds, and actually we encourage it, and we encourage them to speak their minds to our clients as well, not just us. So.
Okay, and Claire, do you think your employees are currently being honest in your employee engagement surveys?
I think currently they are being more honest. We are very, very new in terms of this employee satisfaction, measuring those sorts of details. 2 years ago, when we introduced this, there was a massive amount of fear. I think anonymity has a lot to do with it. You feel you can say things if it's not going to come back on you. And I think Jonty touched on possibly the best question: do you trust your manager? So it was unknown, a little bit hesitant when we first ran it, but what was brilliant is we engaged with our teams, we got that trust, we followed up on the actions that they asked. So then in 2015, when we did Ask Next, we had a massive response and lots more. So now I don't think it was, but I understand why it happened in the past.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that, Claire. And we've had a comment in the chat room from Mia saying one question that we always ask is, how do you feel about going to work every morning? The responses on this question kind of show if the difference over time for when different changes are made to the call centre environment, and just capture it on a very basic level. Dougie, do you think a lot of people overcomplicate employee engagement, and an approach like that is a good way to just keep track of who actually is smiling as they walk through the door every morning?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we do overcomplicate it. I think from experience, one of the things that employees find really difficult to do is express whether they're engaged or not and why they're not engaged. They can quite often talk about symptoms of I don't like this, but not actually what the cause is. It's quite difficult to actually do something about it. So something just like, are you smiling as you walk through the door, is quite an interesting one about the whole feel that people have for it. So yeah, I do like that.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, and we've had an opinion in from Kath saying a good question to ask is, how do you feel about the level of communication in your workplace? I think that comes down to things like having an open door policy, people just feeling like they can communicate with their team leaders. You know, they don't have to sit in a box and, you know, hide things from anyone if they are feeling unhappy. So I think that's quite valuable there.
And I think it's quite interesting. This is an open question, because one of the things we've looked at measurement is often like a yes/no answer or a scale. And I think surveys are also very good at, and I think Claire said this earlier, about the ability for people to give feedback as well as just doing a ranking score. So I think the combination of the two is very, very important.
Brilliant. And we've had another comment in from the chat room that I actually really love this one, from Liz, who says, we have a pulse check that when employees log on, they can either hit a sad face or a happy face, and the team manager will pick up on those who have sad faces, which seems like a wonderful way to start the day in terms of simplifying it and just being able to decide, you know, who is having a bad start to their morning. So yeah, I really like that idea. I'm just going to move on to the next question now, which is, what have you tried to improve employee engagement, and what's worked and what hasn't? So Hiten, what have you done that really hasn't worked in the past in trying to improve employee engagement?
I mean, it's quite difficult to say really, because I think everything you do to try and engage your staff has a positive effect, no matter how small or how great. So it might not work for everyone, but if one person hits that smiley face button in the morning that wouldn't have otherwise, I think that's a positive. So I wouldn't necessarily say anything that a company would do would never work, because you've got to do something for a reason. You've done a survey, you've had some feedback, and that's what prompts you to do something. And whether that's just for one person or 100 people, it's going to make a difference. Things that have worked for us, again, we've got a slightly quirky business model, employing actors and actresses. One thing that we find that works really, really well here at RSVP is we try and keep that dream alive for our staff to make them feel that they are going to be famous and successful and be on the stage or on TV. So we encourage our staff not to be here. Sounds really weird, I know, bear with me, but it works, because, you know, I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to fool myself to think that these people want to have a career within a call centre. I don't think anyone wakes up and goes, I want a career as a call centre agent. Maybe they do, I don't know, but I certainly know that the majority of our staff don't. So for me, things that really work are trying to keep their acting dream alive. So we send them casting breakdowns, we give them free rehearsal space within our own offices that they can book out, they can rehearse their shows here, they can have read-throughs here. We offer them discounts at selected hairdressers.
So it really comes down to just understanding who you've got working for you in your contact centre, and then trying to deliver on making them as happy as possible.
Excuse the pun, but understand your audience, and our guys our guys are actors and actresses, and we understand them. All the way. My MD was an actor, I was an actor, our ops director was an actor, so we understand them, and all our management team were actors as well. So I think for me, employee engagement is really understanding what makes your employees tick. And again, for us here is we treat everyone as an individual, which I think is really important as well. There are some big characters, there are some small characters, so you have to treat everyone differently.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Claire, do you find the role of internal promotion and in terms of the management understanding the staff and what makes them tick is really important to having engaged employees?
Absolutely. With employee engagement, you're dealing with different personalities, and one size doesn't fit all. And I know there was a question Jonty asked about reward and recognition. When was the last time you were rewarded? I know I have some people on my team who I can be like, yeah, high five, good job. Publicly recognise that. Equally, I have other people who, if I did that, they just want the ground to swallow them up. Yeah. So you have to know who your guys are, and equally, they have to know about you. What are you like as theirs? And that understanding just creates that employee engagement via communication. It's the basics just done really, really well. And consistency. I know some of the stuff we've implemented, if we haven't followed through on it and done it time and time and time again, then it's almost detrimental to your employee engagement score. Do what you said you were going to do and do it well.
Yeah, brilliant.
Dougie, it can be quite difficult to, though, once you start measuring and tracking employee engagement, it's one of those things that if you can get a score together, can be quite difficult to shift the needle on that.
Yeah, I think it's, like all of these things with customer experience, employee engagement, you have to be in it for the long term. And a lot of the stuff that we've talked about are kind of micro strategies or tactics. For me, how you move the dial is that you start off with a compelling vision of what the company's about and how you want employees to feel and behave. That becomes your recruitment model, your management model. You need consistent leadership. The high-fiving is great, but if it's not, if you're not leading the vision that's coming through the organisation consistently, it'll feel inauthentic. And ultimately, your employees become advocates of the company, and that's when I think you really start to get traction on moving that dial. I think you can talk about incentives and communication and everything else, and they're bit players for me in it, which is the start. And the biggest mover on this is about a compelling vision and good, consistent leaders.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that, Dougie. We've actually had a few comments coming from the chat room, and there's been one from Naomi that's a bit of a different one, and she says, one part of our employee engagement is featuring staff in our advertising campaigns. They do volunteer, and we also did meet the team video for our social channels. We even brought some pets into the office for the day, and this was really fun for everyone. So yeah, I really love that idea. Mia's saying, I think as a company you need to be very transparent. Agents should be aware of the company goals and have the ability to follow the progress over time. If they can see that they make a difference, it'll engage them to walk the extra mile. I know you've been to quite a lot of contact centres, Jonty. What ideas have you picked up along the way?
Well, I think there's quite a large one of them, but I think the simplest one is to encourage a job well done, and to get the management team onto the floor. One of the best contact centres I ever saw, the customer service director would put his jacket across his shoulder at 4 o'clock, and then he'd gradually walk his way across the floor and it would take him about an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, to leave the office. But in the course of that, he really got a chance to find out what was happening, what was going on with everybody, and people felt that they could approach him. And I think it's that direct touch, the making people feel valued, part of the bigger team, part of the bigger vision, as Dougie said, is one of the best things I've seen.
Okay, and John, what do you think, have you seen that really hasn't worked? What classic mistakes do you think people need to avoid?
Oh, I think there are so many of them. I think the big one that Paul Cooper always used to say is that it's not that your staff don't listen to you, it's that they do listen to you, and then they see how does your behaviour compare with what you're saying. So if you say, you really got to work hard and I'm going to swan off in the afternoon, your staff will sit up and notice that. I remember one contact centre where everyone would notice when the team leader put the headphones on, because that was when the call monitoring period happened, and everyone would suddenly get much more polite, much at that time. So I think it is your staff do listen to what you to what you say, but lead by example.
Brilliant. And we've just got one more comment in from the chat room before we move on to the next question. That's from Liz, agreeing with what Jonty's saying there about the value of what managers can do and bring to the floor, by saying we do a back to the floor day and all managers have to go and sit in with advisors, and we do it monthly, and it's a very powerful incentive in just connecting everyone a bit more and building those bridges, so the manager isn't someone who disappears at 3 o'clock in the afternoon that no one knows anything about. So okay, the next question that we've got, if I can go, is what other factors help to determine how engaged your employees are beyond the survey there, really? So things like attrition rate, absence, the other things, the warning signs that you could get a sense that things aren't maybe going quite right. Dougie, what's your opinion on this? What else do you think people should be keeping an eye on other than the answers to the surveys they're putting out?
So I think, these are the best proxies really for employee engagement. I think if people are going off sick more than they were, it's a good sign they're not engaged, or something is causing them some stress. The attrition rates, and obviously a big one. I think first time fix. If in an employee engagement measure, you've got people that are engaged and people that are not engaged and people who are actively disengaged, and the people that are not engaged won't give you the extra mile, which are normally the bulk, but the people that are disengaged, they really don't give a monkeys, and can actually be fairly actively disruptive. So you'll see your first time fix measures, whatever they are, starting to deteriorate as well. So these are fairly good proxies, especially if it's an annual survey you're looking at, fairly good proxies that something's amiss.
Okay, and what's been your experience of this, Hiten? And do you think that...
Sorry about in there. I'd kind of agree with Dougie on this one. You've outlined too there attrition rates and absence rates. For me, we do a lot of quality assurance checking here, and that's done per account. We don't just have a team that does it for the whole company. It's broken down per campaign and per team. So for me, it's looking at someone's score, how that may be changing. Things like average handle times. If you can see someone's handle time is getting a lot longer because they just might not care enough anymore, trying to get that first call resolution at the same percentage, if not higher than what they were at. So there's lots of things that we kind of look at that we can spot those signs in. And generally, I think we just because we do have dedicated teams and dedicated managers and team leaders, we're quite good at spotting if someone's down or if someone's a bit out of sorts. So it's for us, it's quite easy to spot. I don't know how you feel about that, Claire.
I really do. I like what you're saying.
Yeah.
In my role as a team leader, I don't track attrition rate. Obviously, I manage their absence, but it's very much about I'm there on the floor every day, and I've started doing something this year where I walk around with my team and I just ask them a question once, twice a day. How's the service? Lovely open question. How are things? And just getting that feel for your team and what's going on.
I think that's really important, and I think sort of especially a lot of big companies get kind of bogged down in doing these big employee engagement surveys and not actually getting under the skin of it and actually asking the staff those really important questions that Claire's kind of just mentioned there, and being really personable with them as well.
There's another great point just come up in the chat room from Shona, which is that looking at refer a friend for recruitment. If the sharing rate for that drops, that's got to be a good indication. If good measures are you've got a good friend, a best friend at work, if you're not recommending your work to a friend, then it's a pretty good indication of a problem.
Do you also think team leader to agent ratio has a lot to do with keeping the levels of employee engagement up and actually spotting these things early on? Hiten, what's your team leader to agent ratio at the moment?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we probably have one team leader, depending on the campaign, probably one team leader per 10 to 12 agents, sometimes 15, depending on what the campaign is. Okay. I think it is important. Don't get me wrong. There are some agents that do just want to sit there and keep themselves to themselves, because that's just the type of person that they are. They come in, they do a really good job, they get their work done, and then they go home. There are others that do need that engagement, that do need that little arm around the shoulder to recognise the great work that they're doing. And it's like the two different type of people that Claire mentioned earlier. She can high five some people and they love it. Other people that just want to be swallowed up into the ground. So I think it is important. I think it is important that you have a good team leader stroke manager to agent ratio. So yeah, I probably wouldn't want any higher than 15 agents to one team leader or manager. I think you might lose touch a little bit after that.
Okay, and Dougie, is this a sort of trend that you see in different call centres, that it is a lower agent to team leader ratio that drives better results?
I don't know is the honest answer. I've played with various ratios. What I would say, however, is that the ratio doesn't matter if you've got a bad leader. So if you've got one-to-one with a really bad team leader, that is going to be less engaging than 20-to-1 with a good leader. So it's all about recruitment, training, and retention of good leaders.
Okay, we're going to move on to an audience question now. It's quite an interesting one here from Lennon, who says, what should be a good target for employee turnover in the call centre? Jonty, do you have a number here?
I think there's two ways of measuring employee turnover. There's intentional and unintentional, because sometimes you will want to move someone on. But I think, generally speaking, I'd say anything under 10% would be excellent.
Okay, would you agree with that, Hiten?
Yeah, I definitely would, and it's a little bit different for us, because most people that leave us, because we have quite a rigorous kind of interview process. So we have a phone interview, then we have a face-to-face interview as well. So for us, most people when they leave RSVPs, because they've got an acting job, which sounds really strange, I know, but we rarely have to get rid of someone because of performance, obviously, that we do. I would say I'd probably look at targeting around 7% employee turnover in regards to intentional turnover. Because actually our turnover is probably slightly higher than that, but that's because people leave to get acting work and then they'll come back once that acting job might be a small theatre tour, it might be a few days filming, etc., etc. So.
Brilliant. Okay, I think we're going to jump to a poll now, Jonty. How often do you conduct exit interviews?
Okay, let me just get it lined up, and we'll pop the question up on the screen. So the question is, how often do you conduct exit interviews? Do you do it always? Do you do it often? Do you do it occasionally? or do you never do exit interviews? I'd just like to vote in the box there. How often do you carry out exit interviews? So I think we've got most voting here. So I'll just close the results and I will share them on the screen now. So it looks like the largest figure overall is 59% of people say they always do exit interviews, 10% often do it, 20% occasionally do exit interviews, and 12% have never done an exit interview. So quite a range of different views on there, but it looks like the vast majority always do an exit interview. And it'd be quite interesting to ask the audience if they'd like to drill down on one more question behind that, which is, what do you learn from the exit interviews? What is the information? So the question of the audience: what do you actually learn from the exit interviews? I'm going to put the baton back to you now, Megan. And
okay. There we go. Yeah, I think that's all passed back now. So just see if there's any more comments coming in from the chat room there on what they actually get out of exit interviews. Claire, do you have exit interviews in your call centre that capture ideas on employee engagement? Claire, can you hear me? I think we might have temporarily lost Claire. Hidden, do you do exit interviews in your call centre?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, perfect. I would actually say occasionally, and I'm not a big fan of exit interviews, if I'm honest with you.
Okay.
Reason being is that I think if you need to conduct an exit interview with someone when they leave, then that's a problem in itself, because you should already know what you should be engaged enough with that employers to know why they want to leave. Your manager should know why that person wants to leave. Your team leaders should know why that person wants to leave. So for me, I'm not actually a big fan of it. Occasionally we do offer them. If it's a campaign that might not have lasted long, it might be quite a short campaign, something quite seasonal. So yeah, that's my opinion on it, to be honest.
We've had some interesting feedback in from the chat room of what people have learned. Liz says, we've learned how engaged people are. She says we actually call them retention interviews, which is quite interesting. Maya said we found that agents are very honest with the management team and their team leaders. We get a lot of useful leadership feedback. Nikki says, why wait for people to leave before asking their opinion? Which I think is quite an interesting one. Jules says we learned the real reason for leaving, along with honest opinion on how line managers are doing. Perhaps people are prepared to be more honest once they're leaving. Liz says we learned a lot about the managers from the exit interview. So it seems to be a lot of management level feedback coming back. I guess that ties in that people leave managers and not companies, is the old phrase going. And Mark says we learn what we should or can do to improve our company. So I guess that's also a question that could be asked earlier.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like everyone had an opinion on that. Hidden, when it comes down to any exit interviews you have possibly done in the past, do you think there is a great span for honesty there? There might be something that people don't say on the floor that they are prepared to say, once they're leaving, that you might be missing out on some valuable insight by not having exit interviews.
I think possibly, but I think again it's going back to kind of touching on what Dougie's mentioned and Claire as well. It's just having strong managers and strong leaders, and I think here at RSVP we obviously have dedicated teams that run across various campaigns, and we always encourage our managers to really look after their staff and really encourage that team atmosphere, and we hold team bonding sessions, etc. So I'd like to think that our staff are always in a position that they can reach out to someone within the team, whether that be their manager or team leader or a supervisor. If not, obviously they can go to HR, and that's who will do these independent exit interviews. But I would say we'd like to engage with our staff so personally that they wouldn't have a problem actually going up to their manager and telling them that they're dissatisfied with something, or whether they're thinking about leaving and why.
Okay, brilliant. And I think it's time to move on to the next question now, which is, what trends do your employee engagement surveys actually show? Dougie, what do you tend to find is seen on these sorts of surveys?
So, as we mentioned before, it's really difficult to move the dials. So on a lot of questions, you'll see very little movement from time to time. And one of the things I've also seen, it's why I'm not a big fan of the annual survey, and I struggle sometimes with the measurement of employee engagement because it is emotional. If you ask a person a question on a day, when they're having a bad day or a busy week, it will definitely impact the results, because it's about feelings. And I think that's why we're seeing really good correlations in something like, do you have a best friend at work? Because that doesn't matter whether it's a good day or a bad day, but how you feel about the company may change from day to day. So I think the trends are really difficult to use from kind of the big employee engagement survey.
I know there are stats that tend to skew, say one employee is really unhappy for, some unknown reason. Do a lot of people tend to keep all that data all mixed in together, so, it does drag down the average, say, and it doesn't actually give an accurate reflection of, that most people are happy, or vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, I think the questions that are the real killer questions that seem to come up with consistent results are, do you have a meaningful purpose at what you do at your job? So is your job worthwhile? Do you have a choice in how you do it? So there's something about self-determination. Are you competent? Have you been well trained? Have you got the tools to do it? And do you feel like you're making progress? I mean, these are the things that really give positive correlations to employee engagement. Other things can be up and down with a bit of volatility.
Yeah, I've actually got some agreement there from Shona in the chat room saying trends around managerial support and feeling part of the team and having the right information to do their jobs effectively and being able to approach peers for help there. Jonty, what do you think mostly comes out of these sorts of surveys? What trends?
There's quite an interesting one in the chat room from Maya. So there's, after a good summer in Sweden, we see a lot of happy agents. And so there may be also an element that employee satisfaction may be linked to other things that are happening. And this may be one of the difficulties as if you're doing things quarterly. You might find at the end of a nice summer everyone's very happy, and certainly if you were to do your employee survey around the middle of January, you might hit that blue Monday. Which I think is the third Monday in January, where people have still got another week to do before they get paid, and the Christmas bills already landed on the doormat. So I think there may be elements of timing, external factors also happen. We know that, for instance, with companies, if they put their prices up, employee satisfaction drops down. In the same way as customer satisfaction will drop down, because the more unhappy people coming through. So I think there are probably quite some external factors that can play quite a role in that.
Jonty, would you recommend that maybe call centre managers keep some kind of diary of bigger things that are happening or outside, whether it is a particularly nice day, a bad day, whether there was a bad accident on the way to work and everyone got into work slightly late or stressed that morning, just to kind of backtrack on that information a little bit and see if there's any external factors affecting things?
I think it's the danger with any measurement that if you take the measurement and turn it into a target, you then will get people getting quite defensive on it, trying to gamify it. So I think it's be careful how you're using the information.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I think we'll just move on to the next question now. There's one that's come in from Tarana. just bring that up on the screen now. And they've said, when it comes to pay and how happy you are with it, it always has a low score, but management state it won't change, so is it worth asking the question? So if this, Dougie, what would you say on agent pay here? Do you think it is a factor? Is it worth measuring at all if it isn't something that could change, or is it worth asking so you can potentially take that information to the board in the first place and just say this is a big bugbear of the staff and something needs to be done about it? Do you think it is a valid question to ask?
So this is an example of what I mentioned before about kind of tactics. If you're serious about engaging employees, you specify the person you want to hit your vision, you recruit for them, and you know exactly what you should be paying in your market to be competitive. What's the point in asking people if they're happy about their pay? Do you think you should be paid more? This is one of these questions that just, my mind boggles on what the purpose of it is, because everyone always thinks they should be paid more. So what is the point of asking the question? It raises expectations something might be done about it. You've got to have confidence that you've actually done the upfront strategy work in terms of benchmarking and hitting the right quartile of how you pay and how your remuneration is structured. So yeah, I think it's a crazy question.
Okay, do you agree with that, Claire? Do you ask that any questions to do with pay or promotion opportunities potentially as well in the survey?
I do. Controversially, Dougie, I disagree slightly, but I get your point. And I do understand those, but equally, in terms of an employee engagement survey, in terms of being like a formal way of the business saying, do you know what, talk to me, tell me what you think. I do get what you're saying. I feel it raises the expectations that something's going to be done about it. Equally, if you don't mention it, are we hiding things? Are we saying, well, we want your opinion on everything but this? And it's a catch-22 for me. I think the points you made are brilliant and I understand them. Equally, by not including it, I feel you're being a bit big, like hiding. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but yeah, both sides of the argument there. Hitton, where do you stand on the issue? Is that what's included in your survey or not?
Do you know what? It was funny because actually the question before is what trends do your employee engagement survey show? And the trends that we always find is that no one mentions pay. We ask really open questions and no one actually comes back to pay. So for me, I don't think it's worth asking the question. I'm kind of on Dougie's side. Sorry, Claire.
Sean has also said in the chat room that a better question than the paid one is do staff feel valued?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was my first. In regards to what I think was one of the most important questions that you ask is how valued do you feel to be part of RSVP? And for me, I know, we speak to our staff a lot, and it kind of goes back to Dougie's point of having a best friend at work. And I know that me personally, I would rather be paid less to work somewhere with my best friend. That's just me.
I mean, if you look at
interestingly, Jules said in the chat room, Jules said employee engagement surveys help influence the board regarding questions about pay. So that actually, Jules finds that it helps to justify pay enhancements to the director. So if there is, if you track it and there's a big increase in it, maybe that's an indication that things aren't right. But again, if the management ignore it, then that's a different matter.
I think
there's actually a few interesting.
Finance director wouldn't have influenced me at all because I'd have looked at stats rather than the feelings on it. But I think just kind of going round on that again. If you look at the academic work on employee engagement, as long as people think they are paid fairly, then that is the only correlation that there is to a well-engaged company. Everything else is feeling about having the right tools and how much you're valued and having a meaningful job. So
there's actually been another.
No, go ahead, sorry, Megan.
I think we're just all talking over each other, getting too excited. So we've had quite an interesting comment in from Pamela saying, rather than actually potentially talking specifically about money and career opportunities, the question becomes whether those aspects of the business are actually clearly communicated to the employees and how they actually feel about that information being available to them. We've actually introduced a text opt-in service to text people who want to know when new jobs, development opportunities are announced, as well as emails on the back of this feedback. So, Jonty, have you seen anything like that in other call centres, actually being as clear can be really on any opportunities or any possibilities for pay rises in the business and the positive impact of that?
Yeah, I think career progression is one of the key things, and the contact centre often, I think, views career progression within the company somewhat negatively. Oh, we've trained people up, and then they've moved on to another department. I think it's a great missed opportunity to actually use the contact centre as a stepping stone that people can come in that way and then spread off to other departments. And though rather than being seen as a negative, I think that's a great benefit for the company of getting people, and also from a contact centre perspective, it's a great way of spreading ambassadors out throughout the rest of the organisation, particularly if you need to go off later and fix broken processes or promote the awareness of customer service through the company. I think very important.
Yeah, I actually went to see the results of a survey being announced last week that said that roughly in the UK, a contact centre agent will get up to being an amazing agent in about 12 months' time, and will be looking to either turn out of the industry completely to go on to do something else, or to look for those progression opportunities. And there was some discussion in the room about whether there's any good in trying to fight that 12-month level, whether you should just be looking at that as a critical point in your contact centre agent's journey, and then making sure they're aware of the opportunities in the company or to turn into a different department within the business, so you don't lose them completely. Claire, have you had any experience of that? Do you think after about 12 months, there is something that should be in place there to move an agent somewhere else in the business?
We have the opposite of attrition in our contact centre, which is really lovely. People don't leave. We pay very well in terms of the area, and everything's very nice to have. But that presents us with a slightly different issue of going on to what was said about that progression, that development. The opportunities aren't always there. We have 6 agents to 1 team leader. So I think, to go back to the comments from the chat room, that progression is really important, and also development, not just about development in a role, but development giving the agents the opportunity to learn transferable skills. So, I don't need to use Microsoft Word day to day in my role, but wouldn't it be really good if I knew how to use that and invest in them that way to improve engagement?
Okay, no, that sounds like a really good incentive to have in place there, just to keep agents trained and interested in the role. I think we are starting to run out of time a little bit here, but I just jump to another question, and this one's coming from Melvin, and it does go back a little bit to possibly gaming the data that you're capturing here. Dougie, you might have an answer for this one. How would you effectively set the scene with agents before completing an agent engagement survey to ensure full and honest answers?
I would say minimal scene setting, and just say, please give us full and honest answers. I think, there's a degree of gaming if you try and set the scene and position it. Just let people answer it.
Yeah, you don't want to let everyone off the phones on Friday afternoon early with a big bag of biscuits or something.
Yeah.
No. So when would you say would be the best time of day, possibly, without gaming it? Do you just disperse the survey on a Monday and just let everyone fill it out by Friday at a time that suits them, just for minimum control there?
So having run planning for 3,000 concurrent call centre seats, is whenever workload allows it, and we can schedule it in. So I've never had the luxury of being able to say there's a good time to do it. It's literally schedule it and get it done. Give people the time.
I think it's important to share with people how the survey will be used and how important it is that people will fill it in, because this isn't just another survey that goes out. That if you can show that action has worked on previous ones, that makes it more likely that people will fill it in. Because so that you're ideally looking on employee surveys to get up to at least 80-90% completion rate.
Okay, so it's actually the information that's given to everyone before the survey is handed out that should set the scene a bit better, so people actually believe that something's going to happen positively afterwards. Makes sense.
Exactly.
Hickson, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do actually. It's you know, you don't want your agents to think they're just filling something out for the sake of it. You want them to know that there's going to be an end point to this, and there's a reason for them to do it. Just in regards to the best time to do them as well, is there's never a good time to find a spare 10, 15 minutes to fill out a survey. Definitely not on a Monday, because everyone hates Mondays. So I would normally do it mid to end of the week, normally on a Thursday or a Friday.
I think Pamela might have an answer to that thing about timing. Pamela says, I think it's important that people see what action is being taken on the back of the results, otherwise they won't be as enthusiastic about filling it in next time. We book our teams offline for 30 minutes to complete the survey together, so they have time to think about their answers and reflect on the past few months. So they actually have created that time, and I guess actually creating that time also shows how important the company takes it.
Yeah, and Liz has actually got a continuation of that, saying we use "you said we did" boards to keep all the themes alive between the surveys, and just show that that information is being used positively to drive good change in the call centre. So it definitely comes across as a worthwhile exercise. Okay, so we've actually got a phone question in from Rebecca, and she says, does anyone use any other creative or fun methods to give a snapshot of employee engagement other than surveys or focus groups? Someone mentioned clicking on smiley or sad faces earlier, and I've also heard about companies using tennis balls with employees being asked to throw them in the happy or sad basket at the end of the day. Is there any other ideas there that people could benefit from? Hitten, is there anything that you do that's just a snapshot there that could be a good idea for Rebecca to try?
To be honest, no. I've got to be completely honest with you. There's nothing.
Okay.
There's nothing other than actually give them the actual hard stats from the survey. I do like those ideas, about the smiley sad faces. I think that's a great idea personally.
Yeah.
And I like the tennis balls in the happy or sad basket at the end of the day. But again, I think doing something like that on the day is kind of difficult, because you might have just come off a call with a really, really angry customer, for example. They put you in a really bad mood, and that's not actually how you feel about being at your place of work. It's just how you feel right then at the moment. So yeah, it's difficult. Just going back to the question before, is I like to give my employees quite a lot of time to answer these surveys, probably about 2 weeks. We send them via email. They can click onto a URL and actually spend their time thinking about it out of work, because then nothing that's happening in work, i.e. like a bad caller, can sway kind of your decision, really.
We've had an answer in from Suzanne, who's said on a similar topic about fun methods. We do an annual survey, but it's supported with an open pulsometer for daily feedback. She says the pulsometer is a forum-based in-house tool or in-house built tool that colleagues can post feedback as and when they need under topics such as incentive product ideas, and they receive a response within 24 hours, so they can see and comment upon. So the pulsometer also records sentiments of unhappy, indifferent, and happy through an emoji-type icon. So that seems to be setting up some sort of forum, or I've also seen it with things like Facebook groups or internal groups that can record that as well.
I think that's really interesting. I think to this question, the snapshot question, I guess, concerns me, because employee experience, employee engagement is a big thing, and it's cultural. Yeah. And if you're getting a snapshot, you're not getting a feel for the culture. You're getting a feel for what's happening in that moment. So that then leads to me to, what do you do about it? And if you're doing something about snapshots, you're not doing something strategic. You're kind of bouncing around, tackling things that are maybe not even a big problem. They're just that day's problem. For me, I'm not sure. The snapshot might make people feel a bit better, feel they've been listened to, but what are you going to do with it that's not just a knee-jerk reaction to something, or is it just people want a hug or something? I don't know. It sounds harsh, but I'm kind of I don't see how it fits into a strategy of employee engagement.
I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah. I think, Dougie, you touched on a really good point. There's no way of understanding what made someone put the tennis ball in that basket, and without that, how do you fix it? How do you make it better so the next day it's in the smiley face?
Yeah, I think we've got time for just one last question. So this one has been sent in by Tom and says, do you think employee engagement is more effective face-to-face with an employee in a meeting or via an anonymous email survey for employees to fill out? Jonty, what do you think the answer to this one is?
Oh, this is very, very telling. I guess it depends if you're doing it to an individual level or you want to get a flavour for how the whole amount works. With a face-to-face meeting, you have the one big advantage if you can sort of drill down and get information out. But people may not tell you everything. Maybe an element of people telling you what you want to hear. So not wanting to hurt people's feelings, particularly if it's about their manager. So I think there may be a role for both of them.
Okay, and what's your feelings on this one, Dougie?
Same as Jonty's. I think there's a role for both of them. I think, I said earlier on, I think employees really struggle to express the root cause of why they're engaged or disengaged. I think they can talk about lots of symptoms of it, but they really struggle. And it takes really skillful coaching, non-judgmental skillful coaching to really tease that out. So I think it's layers. The survey, I think, gives you a trend that then needs to be studied further.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I think we've come up to the top of the hour now. So in one or two words, what did you like best about the webinar? If you'd like to just type your answers into the chat room there. You will be able to watch a replay of this webinar at www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. That should be available after 3 o'clock this afternoon. And there's also a chance for you to register for our future webinars. We will be back on the 3rd of March with Are You Staying on the Right Side of the Law? I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank our wonderful panel of speakers today. So thank you, Dougie.
Thank you.
And thank you, Hidden.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. And thank you to Jonty, if you'd just like to wrap everything up now. It's been wonderful having you all here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.